I've been playing Star Wars Hunters for pretty much 3 years now, ever since the soft launch way back in November of 2021, and I've got to say, I absolutely adore this game. It's such a fun experience for any Star Wars fan, and I think they are sitting on a genuine goldmine here with how much potential the game has. But I'd be lying if I said that there weren't any issues with the game and the way that it's been handled, and today I wanted to just kind of throw some constructive criticism out there in the hopes that maybe some of the devs see this video and can hopefully sort of take some of the feedback on board. Now, this could easily come across as a negative video, like wah, this game sucks, but it's actually quite the opposite. I want this game to blow up and be successful because I genuinely believe it deserves it, and like I said, I thoroughly enjoy the game myself. It is clearly made by talented and passionate developers who know their stuff about Star Wars, and so I kind of just feel like there's a few things I need to get off my chest, and like I said, hopefully it can help even 1% with improving the state of the game so that we can get the ball rolling in the right direction for Star Wars Hunters. Now, I'm mostly just going to be covering two specific areas that I feel very strongly about, those being the communication as well as, I guess, the platforms. There are obviously other little issues here and there with the game. I'm not going to nitpick and talk about, you know, like this hunter needs a nerf and stuff like that. Those more minor issues, I think, need to be sorted once the game, I guess, is headed in the right direction. For right now, those are just not the priority. So yeah, we're just going to focus on those two specific areas. Now, starting off with the communication, this for me is easily the biggest downfall of this game so far, because the communication has been essentially non-existent since the soft launch way back in November of 2021. Now, during this soft launch, I could kind of understand it. It's a soft launch. You don't need to be constantly communicating with the player base and stuff like that. Soft launches are a little bit different, and so that was fair enough, and I never really complained about it all that much back then, especially because there was so many delays and stuff like that. It just kind of made sense that they weren't constantly communicating with us. My assumption was, though, that once the game actually launched, that would not stay the same, that they would start to communicate in the same way that every multiplayer game does. And unfortunately, I just can't say that that is true. They have really not changed drastically since the actual launch of the game. It's been like a little bit more active, but that's been pretty generous. It's still been essentially non-existent, and we are getting close towards the end of season 3 now. So the fact that we're going to be heading into season 4 with still very poor communication, that is just not a good thing for the game at all. On top of the actual lack of communication, the interaction that we get on Twitter, which is probably their most active area, I guess. They don't really interact on Reddit. They're very inconsistent, I guess I would say, in the Discord server. But on Twitter, they do post quite a bit. I'd say probably every couple of days there's some sort of post. But they don't feel like they are actually being tweeted by a human. They genuinely feel like they are just some sort of bot that is just tweeting random things. And I'm going to actually show you guys an example of what I mean, because this is one of the wildest tweets that I've ever seen in my probably 6 or so years on Twitter. This account called Galaxy Chronicles randomly on October the 2nd just posted an image of Vader's castle and said, "Will we see Vader's castle again?" Obviously talking about just Star Wars in general, meaning like, are we going to see it in another comic? Are we going to see it in a movie or whatever the case may be? And it was just a random tweet about Star Wars. Now, the official Zynga Star Wars Twitter account, as you can see, the verified account, replied to that, might I say, 2 days later also, and they said, "We appreciate your interest in the Vader's castle," which firstly doesn't make any sense. This is kind of what I mean. It doesn't sound like this is an actual human, even though I'm sure it is, but the Vader's castle does not make sense. They continue on to say, "Right now, we have yet to receive any updates regarding its return to the game. Rest assured that we will forward your feedback to the team for future references." Now, this tweet is absolutely absurd in multiple different ways. First and foremost, the initial tweet has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Star Wars Hunters, so why are they replying to it? I think they assume it was talking about the map in Star Wars Hunters, but it isn't. It's just talking about Star Wars in general. So firstly, their reply at all is just very odd. Now, secondly, the part where they said, "Right now we have yet to receive any updates regarding its return to the game," it was literally never not in the game. I don't know why they tweeted that. The very day that they tweeted that, saying essentially it isn't in the game, I played it. I literally played it that very day. And yet this tweet is essentially saying like, yeah, we haven't got any updates as to when it will be coming back. It wasn't coming back. It was literally in the game already. They then finalized that by saying, "Rest assured that we'll forward your feedback to the team." What feedback? They said Will we see Vader's castle again? So that's a prime example of what I mean. This does not feel like someone actually tweeted this. It looks like it's genuinely just a freaking AI that they've just put in charge of a Twitter account, and it just tweets random things that have nothing to do with anything. This wasn't anything to do with hunters. The information in their tweet was incorrect, and then they are talking to this account as if they gave them feedback, which they didn't. So that right there is a prime example of what the communication is like for this game. That's about as good as it gets on Twitter. That's literally all their sort of tweets are just replying to people saying like, we've taken on your feedback and blah, blah, blah. It's just, yeah, it doesn't feel like it's an actual human. And again, I'm sure it is. I don't actually think it's an AI bot or something, but it feels like it, and that's not a very good sign. Now, that's just Twitter. In terms of their actual website, where, you know, most games will have a website for the game and they'll post like their blog posts, so like patch notes and all those sorts of things on there. On the actual Star Wars Hunters website, when you go to the news tab, right here, you guys can see every single post from Zynga themselves or from Boss Alien, whoever does these blog posts. And as you can see, as I scroll down this page, you can currently see every single post that has ever happened for this game in terms of actual blog posts and announcements and stuff like that. And the final one goes all the way back to the 15th of September 2021. That's more than 3 years ago now, and I've just scrolled through every single blog post we have had about the game. Now again, during the soft launch, I think that's fine. It doesn't need to be constant, you know, communication. I think that was fair enough. But the game has been out now for like roughly 6 months, and that cadence of communication is simply not good enough. Now, I thought I would pick another random multiplayer shooter to go to their website and look at the amount of blog posts and like updates and stuff that they post, and I went and picked Halo Infinite. Now, I know that Halo is an absolutely massive franchise. It's probably one of the most like famous names in the whole gaming industry, but I'm sure any of you that pay any attention to multiplayer shooters will know that Halo is kind of dead right now. It's not in a good place at all, and even though yes, it is still very big, the game is not doing well currently. So I thought I'd pick Halo because I was going to pick like Call of Duty. That's not really fair because they just launched a new one and it's the biggest shooter in the world. So I went and picked Halo, which ironically launched about a month after the soft launch for Star Wars Hunters. So these have been out around the same amount of time. And if we go and look at the website for Halo, these posts that you can see here, all of these different tiles, they are all individual posts. And this right here is the amount of posts that we've had in the last month. Now that's not even that much less than the freaking whole launch. Once we go to the next page, we can once again continue to scroll down. And again, all of these posts here have been within the previous 2 months. As you can see, there's not that much of a difference between the amount of posts from the Halo ones I just showed compared to the Hunters ones that I went through. And that is comparing 2 months of Halo, 3 years into its lifespan, against over 36 months for Star Wars Hunters, which is meant to be currently like in its prime. It's meant to be in the best spot that it can be. Usually season 3, 4, 5 of any game is kind of like the peak of that game, because season 1, you can kind of give them some leeway. They've just launched the game. There might be some bugs and stuff. So season 1's always going to be a little bit rough. Season 2 is usually just sort of doubling down on season 1 and getting the game right. And I feel like season 3 and beyond is where the game really picks up. So I think right now it's fair to say Star Wars Hunters should kind of be in its peak. And yet I've just compared 2 months of Halo and their updates in terms of just like communication with the player base to 36 months of Star Wars Hunters. And as you can see, it's about the same amount of posts, which is just absolutely insane. And that is exactly what I'm getting at. I felt like I needed to kind of show an example, and that right there is a prime example. Halo, a game that isn't doing incredibly well, and yes, it's a very big franchise, so I know that's kind of a little bit unfair, but at the same time, they should be holding their standards to what the bigger and better games do. So that's a prime example of what I mean about the communication. It's just not good. The communication with this game is, I'm going to say, atrocious. It is really genuinely not good at all, and I think they really need to fix that. You need to interact with the player base. You need to make players feel like we are acknowledged and also involved in the journey of the game. Every game that I've played where I've had a really, really fun time in terms of multiplayer games, I generally have like some feeling of involvement. Like I can interact with developers on Twitter. I remember back in the Battlefront 2 days, I knew about 20 or so different developers, not personally, I just knew their names, and you would see them tweeting and you'd see people interacting with them, and it just felt like we were all a big part of the same community, to where even years later I still now see some of those developers tweet. They'll retweet something from 5 years ago about Battlefront, and their entire replies will just be the same people that were in that community just saying, damn, what a time, what a game that was, and stuff like that. There is just nothing like that at all with Hunters. I know about 2 developers who work on the game, and not that it's any fault of their own, they don't really tweet. And like I said, with the actual official Twitter account, it barely tweets coherently. It doesn't even feel like a human. So I hope that kind of gets across what I mean, that there is just this lack of like cohesion in the community. There almost feels like there isn't a community for this game. And that's really disappointing because it's the type of game that should have a really, really strong community, but it just doesn't feel like there is one. And that's something that they need to improve. We can't improve that. We want to be part of a community. We want to play their game. But if there's no ways to kind of interact and feel like you are part of a community, then yeah, that's not on us, that's on the developers and the team at Zynga and stuff like that. Now, finally moving on to the final area I wanted to talk about. I'm going to keep this short and sweet just because I've already been ranting on for longer than I expected. I really think this game needs to expand its horizons. I know that right now we're on mobile and on the Switch, and ironically, those are the 2 biggest platforms in gaming. Mobile gaming is by far bigger than pretty much every other platform combined. And then when you look at the actual consoles, the Nintendo Switch has outsold both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X combined. So technically, Star Wars Hunters is on the 2 biggest platforms available, and yet it doesn't feel like that's where this game should be. It feels like this game should be on PC and on both PlayStation and Xbox. And that's not to say it shouldn't be on the Switch and it shouldn't be on mobile. I think that's also awesome. But this does feel like the type of game that needs to be on those more, I guess, hardcore platforms. I feel like when you think about a Switch, I think of like casual gaming. I think of people playing the more casual, family-friendly type of games. You play Mario Kart with your buddies. You play like Minecraft while you're sitting on the couch. Games like that are what I think of when I think of the Switch, as well as obviously all their exclusives. When I think of a PS5 or the PC, for example, I think of games like Call of Duty and all the battle royales out there and stuff like that. That is generally the type of game that those players will play. That's why those games are so big on PC and on consoles. And I really do feel like this game needs to be over there in order to kind of gain that player base too. Because right now, even though yes, it's available on mobile and the Switch, I don't think most people who are looking for a 4v4 arena shooter are looking on their phone or on the Switch. I think those people want to play those games on their consoles or on their PC. And I think especially PC gamers do tend to love those sort of hero/arena shooters. Look at like Overwatch and Valorant and Counter-Strike and stuff. Those games are PC through and through. Yes, obviously they do now have like console variants as well, but when I think of those games, I think of PC, and generally that is a big portion of the PC player base playing those sorts of games. I think for the future of this game, it really does need to launch, at least on the PC, and I do really think that it would benefit the game a lot too to launch on like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. It would just introduce this game to so many more people, because again, I know that the actual available play base for mobile and Switch is massive. And again, I'm not saying like remove them from those platforms, but I don't think people are looking for a shooter on their phone most of the time. And if they are, they're going to play games like COD Mobile and stuff like that. There are already big shooters out there. It's just not a platform that I think of, damn, I want to play a shooter, so let me go and look on the Play Store, for example. I would instantly go to my PlayStation or my PC or my Xbox if I want to find a new shooter, and that's why I really do feel like Hunters needs to be on those platforms. Whether that happens or not, I honestly have no idea. I really do think it's possible, but I think there's a difference between it being possible and being likely. I genuinely have no idea if it is likely or not, so I guess I don't really want to speculate on it too much, but to me it feels like such a missed opportunity if they just decide to never, I guess, push this game forward onto other platforms. It's on the Switch, it's on mobile, it tends to play really well on those platforms, and it's kind of launched in a nice, stable state. And now I do feel like it should be at the forefront of their mind to try and, I guess, push this game to other platforms. The more platforms it's on, the more players there will be. That's good for players because it feels like we're part of a bigger community, but it's also good for Zynga because at the end of the day, more players equals more money for them. That equals more support for the game with that money that they're getting, which means better content for the players, which means happier players and therefore a more successful game. So I really want this to happen eventually. Whether it does, again, I'm honestly not too sure, but I needed to put that out there because to me this should be one of their biggest priorities, is launching this game, put it on Steam and just get the feelers out there to see if this game can actually do well on other platforms too. With that being said though, I am keen to hear all of your thoughts as well. Are there any areas that you guys think I missed? And be sure to let me know what you guys think about the stuff that I touched on too. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts, and hopefully if any of the devs are watching this, hopefully they can read through your comments as well and kind of get the thoughts that you guys are feeling about the game too. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.